One of the jobs on Barry Trotz's offseason to-do list is shore up the defense ahead of next season. Well, today we're going to hear from the last defenseman standing this season, Brady Skjei, on the positives he is taking away from a season full of negatives.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Wednesday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio and Friends. I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
I often wonder which one of us would commit the crime and which one of us would drive away from it. Like who's the getaway driver and who's the actual criminal. But I think we could swap that out. We both have that in us.
I was going to say, I feel like it depends on the day, honestly. We do both have it
crime.
in us. Yes.
It's 100% true, you all. Oh, my goodness. Well, Emma and I have been working through the post-season media availability that we have had with the players. We're still waiting for the postseason media availability with general manager Barry Trotz, which has not taken place yet. That is just of note. Of note. Barry Trotz has not addressed the media to talk about the season that was or his offseason plans. But one thing that he has been open about even during the season is that in the offseason, he's got to address defense. And so we wanted to circle back and hear from and share the thoughts of Brady Skjei. Brady Skjei, bless his heart, the last defenseman standing, basically. He went from being a newcomer to being the guy everybody was like, hey, what's going down, Brady? And he had a really interesting perspective. This was one of the most interesting postseason media availabilities we had. And I think it tells us a lot about Brady Skjei, maybe not as much as we would want to hear from Brady Skjei about the season, but it tells us a lot about who he is. And I think he and I think we might be on the same wavelength. So we're going to hear from Brady Skjei. He's going to talk to us about the season. He's going to talk to us about coaching. He's going to talk to us about the future on the blue line. Before we dive into all of that with Brady, do want to let you know this episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. All right, Emma, when I think of Brady Skjei, and I mean this respectfully, he is the Ann Peggy of the offseason acquisitions. Those of you who know Hamilton will know exactly what I mean. In Hamilton, there are the Schuyler sisters. There's Angelica, Eliza, two main characters in this musical. And then they have a younger sister, Ann Peggy. And really, she's just sort of there. She just came for the food.
That's a perfect description. You know, Stamkos is Angelica, Marchessault's Eliza, and Brady.
And Brady.
He's just the third one. Not that he should be, but I mean,
he just was. Bless.
Yeah.
He could have been somebody's Eliza, but he came to the Nashville Predators at the same time as Stamkos and Marchessault. And so he has been sort of relegated in the minds of the fan base as the Peggy of the offseason. But look, he was a big fish. He was a big defensive fish that Barry Trotz landed. Of course, it was a challenging season for Brady Skjei, as it was for everybody. He did play all 82 games this season, which is something that very few Nashville Predators players could say. And I don't think anybody on the blue line could say. They were dropping like flies. He had 10 goals and 33 points. He had a -24. I thought it was interesting because I looked at his career sort of 82 game average to say, okay, where is he based on his average? Dead on his average. His average is 9 goals and 33 points. Again, he had 10 goals and 33 points this season. A -24 and plus minus, that's a stat that some people believe in and some people are like, that's not real. here with the plus and minus, what you have to remember with the Nashville Predators, anytime you look at somebody's plus minus, specifically this season, is that Nashville just didn't score any goals. It was very hard for a player to get a plus when you are the 32nd worst team in goal scoring or 31st, way at the bottom of the league in goal scoring. Your plus minus is going to be skewed. And Brady Skjei played all 82 games. So I don't find that number particularly alarming, projecting any sort of defensive issue in the future. Here's what is so interesting to me about Brady Skjei, Emma. Came into the season and it was a struggle. Like, there's no two ways about it. Brady Skjei really struggled to understand the defensive system and to kind of get comfortable with what Bruno wanted from the defenseman when it comes to how he wants the team to play. And yet he finished the season really the guy holding the blue line together. And I think, man, Brady Skjei has lived 1,000 years over the course of 82 games this season. I don't know how he did that.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of flew, as you said, as the Ann Peggy of the offseason acquisitions. He kind of flew under the radar as he joined the organization, but then, of course, he kind of became the lightning rod for a lot of the defensive issues that this team was having, because he was the big new face on the blue line, and because he was, as you said, the only one who played all 82 games. And so it was like, well, there's your problem. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily accurate. Again, that's not to say, to your earlier point, not to say at all that he did not struggle early in the season, because he absolutely did. No one's denying that. He's not denying that. But I think that, we've talked about this before. You look at where he's coming from. I mean, talking about big fish on the free agent market, it was him and his defensive partner, Brett Pesce in Carolina. Those were two of the biggest fish on the market. And they both came from a system that was very much a man-on-man defense situation.
Yes.
And so extremely different. You can't expect him to figure that out overnight, especially when everyone around him is changing. I mean, it was, first he was with Roman Josi, and then he wasn't. And then now he's with Nick Blankenburg. And I mean, they kind of had a good thing going at the end there. But even then, I just don't think that I'm not trying to defend him and say that he did nothing wrong and he bears no blame for anything that happened this season, but I do just think he became a little bit of a lightning rod with all of the moving parts on defense, like all of the problems they had, losing Fabro, losing Carrier, eventually losing Willsby and Josi to injuries. I mean, like, it's just, you'd have to be superhuman not to be affected by any of that, especially when you're playing in a new system that's very different from the one you played in for the last 4 or 5 years. So I just think it's hard. And I've said this before too, that Brady Skjei, if you look at his career, his worst seasons in his career, which include this one with Nashville, have always been his first season with a new team. And
I think
so
that's such an important point.
it follows the pattern. Like his first season when he got traded from the Rangers to Carolina, he struggled. And then what happened? He became the big fish. He developed into that. So he's a little bit of a, I don't want to call him a late bloomer, but it's more of just like, this follows the pattern for his trajectory. So I am not freaking out after one season of Brady Skjei not being, as advertised.
Yes. I think it's so important what you brought up. He was brought here to be Roman Josi's top defensive pairing partner. That was sort of the intention of bringing Brady Skjei, was like, okay, we're going to give Roman Josi this player, which made Roman Josi play on his non-dominant side. But when you watch Roman Josi, it's hard to know he has a dominant side because Josi is a little bit of everywhere. That is a very different position to play with somebody who plays like Roman Josi. When you have played with Brett Pesce, Brett Pesce, Roman Josi. One of these things is not like the other. Not that either one of them is bad, but they play a very different defensive game. And it didn't work. And it makes me think, did we learn nothing about the McDonough-Ekholm from the McDonough-Ekholm kerfuffle, where you bring somebody in and you say, we're going to switch you to your non-dominant side and it's going to click, and it doesn't. And I think, be mindful, Barry Trotz, as you're out shopping, be mindful that that is not automatic.
Yeah. Stop trying to switch these guys to their non-dominant sides. Like, yes, it's great that you have that option that Josi can play on his non-dominant side and he can do it effectively, but just stop. Like, I just think that, it's like you said, it's the McDonough-Ekholm thing. As soon as people started, when Nashville signed Brady Skjei, and as soon as people started saying, "Oh, there's your partner for Roman Josi," I immediately started getting nervous because I'm like, they do this, and it's like, well, there you go. He's going to fill that exact role, and if he doesn't fill that exact role, then the signing is a failure, and that's not true. It's just not the right role for him and probably never should have been in the first place. But I just think that there's too much talent between Roman Josi and Brady Skjei. I do think that the better play is to spread them throughout the lineup. And so I like the idea of having Josi on the top pairing, Skjei on the second, but you got to get good partners for them. And you had Dante Fabro and Alex Carrier, but whatever. Just
you sure did.
Of note.
Of note, yes. So it was a tough first season here for the Ann Peggy of the Nashville Predators blue line. But it's very interesting what he took away from it. Coming up, we're going to hear from Brady Skjei on his first season here in Nashville, how he evaluated his performance, and what he is taking away from one of the most disappointing seasons in franchise history. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, friends, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on all that action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you are going to get $250 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it is picking your favorite team or if you want to dive into player props. They have things from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many different ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Emma, we are talking about Brady Skjei and the season that he had. And again, some struggles there for it. He remained the last man standing and kind of had to turn into the veteran presence on the defense when he hadn't even been here a full season. And I thought he did really well with that role. A lot happened in 82 games for Brady Skjei. So what did he take away from this season? I thought it was really interesting when we asked him that. This is what he had to say.
When we lost Yost and I kind of stepped a little bit more into a leadership role, I'm happy about that. I think that was good to help out the young guys, especially the young defensemen coming in. So that was good. And then, like I said, like the few games that there's games we played really well and dominated the puck. And I think taking those and looking at those and moving forward, we have a ton of great players in that room. And a lot of games this year, we kind of kicked ourselves like up a goal or losing a lot of games by a goal. So I think the players in that room, that is the group we're going with, and I believe that team can win. And so I'm excited for the future. Obviously, I'm going to be here for a while, and I'm excited to keep improving every year and definitely get back in the playoffs.
I think we have found somebody who may have just a touch even more optimism than me. because I love that answer from Brady Skjei. I was like, "Oh, Brady Skjei, look at you finding the silver lining in a shithole." But here is one thing that is positive about this season for Brady Skjei, and this is something that we talked about when it comes to these young players like LaRue, like Evangelista, like Svechkov. Brady Skjei has been through it, you all. This season probably rocked his world. He is going to be able to enter next season and enter the next 6 seasons, because that's how long he's under contract with the Nashville Predators, knowing a lot more. You gain a lot of wisdom when you go through trials. And I think Brady Skjei, the leadership that he has in the locker room at the end of this season is way more than it would have been had he not been in the position where he was the last man standing and, he had to find a way to sort of rally the defensive troops that were around him. And so there are some positives from this season for Brady Skjei, especially specifically like the leadership. But I love that he's like, you know what? A lot of times we beat ourselves in games, and I thought, well, he ain't wrong. He ain't wrong, but what can you do to fix it? What do you think about what Brady Skjei had to say, and how is this season, Emma, going to change who he is when he comes back in training camp? On ice, off ice, what did we see from him that we can expect more of?
Well, I do think the leadership piece is important. I think that helped elevate him out of the Ann Peggy status. I think that it will be, because if you sign a guy for 7 years, you want him to be a leader, to play a role like that. And on the back end, he was kind of thrust into that role pretty quickly because of the injuries and the trades and everything else. So, I mean, I think that was good for him. As far as his optimism, as you say, I love it, but also, like, just the realist in me is like, well, what's he supposed to say? What's he
I know.
supposed to say? Like, what, he's not gonna come out and be like, well, I guess I'm stuck here for 7 years. So, like,
I don't know, maybe
I'm not
Jonathan
I'm not
Marchessault would say that, but Brady Skjei probably no.
yeah, they're not all Jonathan Marchessault, but I do think that, like, it's and I'm not saying that he thinks that he's like, well, crap, I'm stuck here now. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
that he thinks that, but I do think that, like, he made, even when I talked to him throughout the year, he made a lot of a little Ryan O'Reilly-esque comments about, like, things that, because sometimes I would go and ask him about, like, the system and, how this team plays on defense versus Carolina, and he would immediately get, like, almost defensive, and
Mhm.
not in a mean or a rude way, but he'd be like, well, I think I'm improving. And I'm like, no, no, I'm not saying that you've been playing poorly. I am genuinely asking, like, objectively speaking,
Right,
what
what's
makes
different?
this system different? And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. And then he kind of, like, gets into explaining the X's and O's of it. But I think that he, it showed me that he takes this very seriously and he
Mhm.
took it very personally. None of these guys want to lose, obviously. Like, I don't think anything new, but I just think that he takes his role here very seriously. And it's just for, of course, when things start going poorly, people start blaming and reaching for things and saying, like, well, Brady Skjei got his big contract and then he stopped trying. Like, that
Oh, I
is not
can't stand
true.
that.
That's
Mm-mm,
not true.
not true.
Was it a good season for him? No, no one is arguing that. But and he's not arguing that. But I think that, he's got the right attitude. And again, he's saying what a lot of us are saying. He's looking at the players in the room and saying, this should be a winning roster. Like, this should
Yes.
be. And a lot of the things, like needing help on defense, are not his fault. Like, he can't help but play with the hand that he's been dealt. So just kind of the situation that he's in right now. I mean, I love the optimism. At the same time, I'm like, I mean, what else is he gonna say? But
I gotta say. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you talk about, the leadership role that he had. One of the players that really blossomed with him was Nick Blankenburg. And Nick Blankenburg, I always laugh when I think about Nick Blankenburg. So impressed with what he has done. But does anybody really think Nick Blankenburg was like, you know what's going to happen this season? I'm going to be on a top defensive pairing in the NHL. Like, I think Nick Blankenburg believes that he can do that, but the opportunity to present itself that way to Nick Blankenburg was going to take a twist and a turn to get there. It did. And he and Skjei together really did a pretty good job. I think Brady Skjei was very good for Nick Blankenburg, and the two of them found something. And look, on a defensive pairing, you've got to find something. There's got to be something that pairing define, talk about like an identity line for the forwards. There is also an element of that for defensive pairings. And I think together they found a way where they read each other well. They played very well off of each other. And I think that's something that he can build on. I love too that he's like, hey, this isn't a talent issue. This isn't a talent issue. I am looking around the locker room and it is not a talent issue. And I think it's important that you hear that from somebody like Brady Skjei, who has been in a New York Rangers locker room, who has been in a Carolina Hurricanes locker room, and who is looking around the Nashville locker room when it had healthy people in it and said, look, this is not a talent issue. There were issues, but talent isn't one of them. So that, of course, leads into the question, well, if it's not talent, Brady Skjei, what do you think of the coaching? This is what Brady Skjei had to say about coaching.
The coaching staff did a great job. I think obviously there's things we might have to tweak here and there to give ourselves a little better chance of winning. We're trying to play as fast as possible. I think every team is doing that. And there's things that slow the game down, turnovers, execution, stuff like that. I think those are the things that kind of got us in trouble a little bit this year. And a few things that we just kind of had some D-zone breakdowns here and there. So we'll work on it this summer and go back to the drawing board and try to fix those small things. But I think the way we play when we're on our game with playing fast and playing with that speed, and that showed that we can play with any team in the league. So just got to get back to that and try to limit some of the breakdowns.
So, Emma, if we took a drink of alcohol for every time we heard the word tweak or adjustment in the post-game media availability with the players, how intoxicated would we be?
Oh, we definitely could not go on the air in that condition. I mean, It might be entertaining, but maybe that would be our crime that we get committed for.
We wouldn't drive, just so we're clear.
No.
We would drive, but
but public intoxication could be a very real thing. Listen, if you covered the Nashville Predators in this season, I think that should be your get out of jail free card, to be honest.
That's right.
Anyway, don't come to me for legal advice, but I think that it's, again, I don't really know what to make of it. I think that answer from him was very vanilla. Again, compared to Jonathan Marchessault, very vanilla. It's like, yeah, there's tweaks we can make. Again, what are you going to say? You can't look back at the abomination that was this season and say, yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I
nailed it. We nailed it.
Again, what is he supposed to say? He has to say, yeah, there needs to be a change made or changes made. And I'm not saying that he is secretly harboring this desire that all the coaches get fired. And then, I'm not trying to plant that seed. I'm not into the tinfoil hat stuff, but I think that it is really just everyone involved is aware of how bad this season was. So no one is living in the delusion that, yeah, no, I wouldn't change anything. Everything was good. Let's run it back. Even, as much as fans might think Barry Trotz is thinking that right now. No one is thinking
No
that.
one is.
And so now, again, that doesn't mean a damn thing if you don't actually make changes and improve next year. But we're not there yet. We can only kind of speculate about the future at this point because we're still, this is still very fresh and very raw. But I mean, gosh, honestly, the part that he talked about, I mean, he kind of glossed over it, but I want to point it out so people don't miss it when he said, we're trying to play as fast as possible. And I think a lot of teams are. You hear that a lot, that Andrew Burnett's coaching style and his system, like that's the way the game is going, like the speed and the puck hunting and puck possession, just that is where the game is going. And that's not necessarily incorrect, but I think that the whole we're trying to play as fast as possible, a lot of what we saw this year, it looked like they were prioritizing speed at the expense of just basic mechanics sometimes.
Yeah.
And it showed. Like, it looked like they were chased a lot of games and the game was too fast for them. So now I'm not going to sit here, and I'm not a coach. I'm not going to say that I know what the answer is as far as how to help slow the game down for them in a way that doesn't, hurt them. But it was just clear it was a whole team issue, that it's like guys never were able to find each other. They never knew where the other guy was. They just, there were so many miscues and so many passes that got overshot and just so many just little things that end up contributing to that overall frustration and the losses. And no one is saying that, there was nothing wrong this season. So when he goes and says, yeah, we need to make some tweaks, of course they do. Again, like, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the players themselves, like, I don't know. I've been watching the playoffs this year and I'm like, man, the Predators are so far away from this. Like, what, I mean, in terms of what we saw this season, it was so far away from what we're seeing in the playoffs. And again, I don't know what the answer is to fix that, but I think that, everyone's aware that
Yes.
everyone's aware.
We all know. We all know. Mentioning playoffs, Brady Skjei's former team eliminated the New Jersey Devils last night. Emma and I are going to talk about what we have seen from the postseason. What has surprised us in the playoffs so far? All right, Emma, talking about Brady Skjei, former Carolina Hurricane. Well, the Carolina Hurricanes eliminated the first team from the first round, the New Jersey Devils. Cody Glass, y'all eliminated Cody Glass. Take a minute and just think about what you've just done. Looking at that series, not super surprised. Game one, I said this in the squad show that will be coming out this week. It looked like the Hurricanes were waterboarding the New Jersey Devils in the first game. Like, they just couldn't even get a breath of air. And then I thought maybe New Jersey had gotten their skates under them. No. When you look at Carolina, what do you think about them moving forward? Is this a team that could continue on through the postseason, do you think? Do they have what it takes?
What's unfortunate is their goaltending situation. It was shaky to begin with. And they end up going with Freddie Anderson, despite Pyotr Kochekov starting more games during the regular season. They end up going with Freddie Anderson. He looks unstoppable in the first couple games of the series, and you're like, okay, we're not going to mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's working. Let's go with it. But Freddie Anderson does as Freddie Anderson does, and he has a history of this. He gets injured in the playoffs, and that happened. And I'm not saying that that's his fault. I mean,
Right. It's just been what's happened.
Timo Meyer, one of Anne's favorite people, just absolutely barreled into him, and it looked like possibly a head injury. It's been undisclosed. that usually means it's a head thing. Hate to see it. Kochekov, his postseason record kind of speaks for itself. I think he has like an 817 save percentage in postseason games. Like, it's not great, y'all. And so that worries me.
Mhm.
And then last night, oh my gosh, the game last night, I was like, this game is
What?
drunk.
What
This game,
happened?
I
They
was like,
drank every time a Predator said tweak or adjustment in this game.
exactly. And it was like, so New Jersey went up 3-0, like to the point where I thought, so I was watching the Toronto Ottawa
Mhm.
game, which I want to talk about in a second, but I was watching that game and I kept checking the score of Carolina, New Jersey. And I'm like, I kept thinking there was something wrong with my computer, like it was glitching or something, because every time I checked, the score was different. I was like, what
Yes.
the heck? And it was, so New Jersey went up 3-0 in the first period. Carolina ends up scoring once, and then they score again, and then they tied it, and then New Jersey went up again, and then they tied it again. So it was 4-4 going into overtime. Then, of course, it goes to double overtime. Carolina finally wins it, courtesy of Sebastian Aho. Looking at Carolina, they are a team that a lot of people thought were going to take a step back this year, because a big part of that is because Brady Skjei and Brett Pesce aren't there.
Yep.
And that was a big part of it. But I do think that I think they have the pieces. I don't know that they have the goaltending, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I'd
I've
like to be
loved
wrong, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
I have loved watching Carolina because Carolina, in some ways, has been through it. Like they lost Natchez, and then then it becomes this storyline where, you know what, nobody really wants to sign in Carolina long term, and that was kind of a brouhaha. And Carolina's like, don't care. We're off doing our own thing. So I have loved watching just Carolina. Like, you all go ahead and talk about us. We're just going to be out here taking care of our business against the New Jersey Devils, and they did. You mentioned Toronto, Ottawa.
Yeah.
I don't.
So
Could we just have won the series, Toronto? Because now I have angst.
well, here's the thing, and like going back to Carolina for a second,
Mhm.
a big part of why they've had success is because their top guys are showing up. Sebastian Aho,
Oh yeah,
Andrei Svechnikov, Logan Stankoven, Jacob Slavin,
amazing
all of these
addition.
guys are showing up. And I'm sorry, but the Leafs are leafing so hard right now. It's just, I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. It's like, so last night was game 5. First of all, entering last night, Toronto was 1-12 in their last 13 series clinching games in the playoffs.
Oh,
Friends,
you
they
all.
are now 1-13 in those games. They have now had 2 chances to close this series out. They didn't do it. And if you're watching the line graph for each of these teams, Ottawa is going like this. They're going straight up, and Toronto is going straight down. And it's like they're meeting, at this crossroads here. And I think that, if you look at these teams, Toronto is the better
Oh,
team overall.
100%.
They're the
100%.
deeper, they're the deeper team. And again, in the first game, like you said, similar with Carolina and New Jersey, like Toronto absolutely waterboarded the Senators in the first game. They won 6-2, wasn't even close. It never looked close at any point. And, Marner was on the score sheet,
Yes.
Matthews,
Yes.
Nylander,
Yes.
Tavares. And now
Yes.
I want to sort of exclude Tavares from this because he is part of that core 4, but he is the only one of the core 4 that has actually shown up consistently during this series. So I don't want to crap on him too much, but I think that the rest of them, like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, where did they go? Like
Well, and
last
you
night,
thought they had broken that curse to start this series. You were like, okay, you know what? Toronto, they're going to sweep this because the guys are here. Nylander on the ice this postseason and showing up. And then last night, I'm like, excuse me.
Has anyone seen Austin
Excuse
Matthews?
me.
Because I haven't. Like,
Excuse me.
someone report him missing because he's just invisible. And I just think that, for Ottawa, Linus Ullmark has gotten better each game, and I think that that's why Ottawa has gotten better each game in a big way. They're also starting to get contributions from people not named Brady Skjei, which is important. Their defense is showing up too. Toronto, I just thought it was so, like, again, Leafs are gonna leaf because it was the third period. Toronto was down, or Ottawa was up 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
Ridley Gregg made a stupid penalty. Toronto's got one of the best power plays in the league, and you're like, oh my gosh, Ottawa, come on. What are you doing? That was a boneheaded move. What are you doing? Not only does Toronto not score on that free gift of a power play, but they gave up a shorthanded goal.
Yes.
To Dylan Cousins. And again, that made it 2-0. And there was still like 10 plus minutes left in the period. So there was still a lot of time left. But when Ottawa scored that second goal, you would have thought, it felt like they did it with 30 seconds left in the game.
It really did. It changed. It was like Toronto got punched in the mouth and staggered. They just staggered.
It just sucked the air out of the place, and you could just tell. And now the panic among Leafs Nation,
oh my gosh,
is
I feel it
sky high. And I'm like, I just, I'm so glad that I'm an objective observer in this entire thing, because I'm like, I can't even imagine the amount of pressure on this team now as they head to Ottawa. I feel like this series is going to go 7 games, and game 7 is going to be Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. Bring it on.
Can you imagine, Emma, how, if you all thought the Nashville Predators regular season was catastrophic, that is nothing compared to what it will be if Toronto has to take this to 7 games and loses. That, my friends, is a hockey catastrophe of epic proportions. Epic. So it really, in theory, could even feel worse, Nashville Predators fans. Take heart.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have not won a playoff series in 5 games or fewer since 1967.
Oh my gosh, it's older than me.
The Nashville Predators have only existed since 1998. So, again, just a little perspective. It could be so much worse.
It could be so much worse. I'm telling you, I am really enjoying the playoff hockey, but I am with you. It makes me look at what we saw this season and say, okay, Nashville, it's got to be way better. And yes. I agree with Brady Skjei. I look around that locker room and I think there's talent here that can perform way better in the regular season than they did. Barry Trotz has to do some work in this offseason to fill some holes and to shore some things up when it comes to the roster. Also need to make sure we're still on go with Andrew Brunette as the head coach or not. We won't know that for sure. Just assume he's the head coach, because he is, until we hear otherwise. But we're still waiting to hear. Of note, still waiting to hear from Barry Trotz on the postseason press conference. Of note. Maybe he is in Turks and Caicos. Maybe he is in Milwaukee. Playoffs start tomorrow for the Milwaukee Admirals. On tomorrow's show, we're going to preview the AHL postseason. We're going to be talking about what happened in Milwaukee this season, the familiar faces that you will likely see playing for Milwaukee. It's going to be a really exciting postseason for Milwaukee. So if you are sitting back and having FOMO watching Toronto implode in the postseason, don't worry, because there's great playoff hockey coming your way from Milwaukee. So we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. Before we wrap up this show, though, Emma, on this Wednesday, will you let everyone know where they can find you and where they can find your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work, Preds coverage and Stanley Cup playoffs coverage at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow to talk postseason in the AHL, and we may have to talk about some NHL postseason stuff then as well. We'll see you then.